tonight, we are extremely lucky to have a local New Hampshire story to tell us about World War II from someone that could have easily grown up with our family, could have easily have been friends with our parents or great-grandparents. And their story of courage is utterly amazing. And all of you that know me know that I love to tell the story of the soldier. And I love to tell the story of what the individual person did in order to achieve the objectives that were necessary. So many of them went way over and beyond that, and this book talks about that. Tonight we're very lucky to hear Dennis Vachon here. He is middle child, raised middle child. He graduated from the University of New Hampshire, served in the Peace Corps in Senegal, and practiced law in New Hampshire for 30 years. He served 10 years in the New Hampshire legislature. He lives in Stratford with his wife, Jane. He has 2 adult children and several grandchildren. And he is a wonderful researcher and meticulously tells his father's story from a perspective that can only be told by someone that is very interested and cares deeply that that story is told wonderfully. So without further ado, I will introduce to our speaker.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to the presentation of my book, Unfaltering Courage, which is about my father's World War II military history. My father served as a flight engineer and top turret gunner on B-24 bombers based out of Cerignola, Italy. When he died on April 8, 1995, 10 days shy of his 76th birthday, he left a treasure trove of World War II memorabilia, including diaries, photos, and documents. My dad's story is truly remarkable because he beat the odds and survived 50 missions. Most airmen did not survive 7 missions. Those 6 months in 1944 were the defining moments of his life, and his diaries detail the day-to-day drama he lived through. My dad was just a regular guy. I'm not even sure if he finished high school. His mother had died, and his father remarried. The family lived in an apartment in a 3-family belonging to his mother's parents in Somersworth. When I started looking for ideas on how to share his remarkable story, I found many memoirs written by pilots, but few by enlisted men. That confirmed for me the need to tell my father's heroic story. The heroes are not only the guys flying the planes. My father began his military career in September 1940 when he joined the New Hampshire National Guard and was assigned to the Coast Guard anti-aircraft group known as Battery B. While in Battery B, he trained at Camp Ulen, Texas, one of the U.S.'s largest military field training centers of the day. Look at all those tents. Here's my dad in front of one of those tents. This is his first time away from home, and it was probably a bit of a lark. We are not at war yet, but the storm clouds are there. The government is starting to train men in preparation for war. My dad was discharged from Battery B in September of 1941 and went to work at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. A few months later, the attack on Pearl Harbor changed his life and that of most Americans on December 7, 1941. By January 1942, my dad had re-enlisted, this time in the Army Air Corps. My father began his Air Corps training at Chinook Field, Illinois, where he had airplane and engine mechanics training. This was the start of 2 years of intense preparation for air war. After my dad enlisted in the Army Air Corps, his father sent him a diary, which inspired him to start keeping a record of his military experience. His first entries were about his family back home. His brother Roland has joined the Navy and is fighting in the Pacific. Roland can also be seen in the photo on the right, along with my dad's other siblings, his sisters Beatrice and Madeline, and his brother Gerard, a missionary in Africa. My dad's diaries pick up in intensity as he moves on to flight training at the Air Gunnery School at Tyndall Field in Florida. He arrived there in January 1943. This is where the crewmen had to pull it all together. In 1943, B-24 planes were rolling off the assembly lines in Michigan, one every hour. Training was fast, furious, and dangerous. Between 1939 and 1945, 15,000 air crewmen died during training in the U.S. A lot of people who sacrificed their lives for our country, and something you don't hear a lot about. But my dad recorded the flight training deaths and accidents while in Florida, a valuable first-person account of this dangerous aspect of their military training. Here's a picture of the production floor at Ford's Willow Run plant in 1944, where the company was producing B-24 bombers at the rate of one every hour. They had a special plant they built, and they had an airfield at the end of the plant, and when the planes came out, they tested them right away, right out of the plant. The plane that was my dad's world was the B-24 bomber, the workhorse of the air war. The Liberator, as it was called, had a wingspan of 110 feet and a range of 2,850 miles. It could fly 175 miles an hour and as high as 25,000 feet. The crew had to wear oxygen masks and heated flight suits that connected to the plane. They were cramped, cold, and terrified. The B-24 was also known as the Flying Coffin because about a third of the 18,000 planes that were made during the war were shot down. B-24s typically had a crew of 10. There were 4 officers, the pilot, the co-pilot, the navigator, and the bombardier, who can be seen standing in the back row of this photo of the Hells Angels crew. And the 6 enlisted men are seen in the front row, including my dad, who is the third from the right, wearing the white life vest. All of the enlisted men were gunners, and some had additional duties like flight engineer and radio men. As flight engineer, my dad was responsible for the mechanical systems, the hydraulic system that ran the landing gear and opened the bomb bay doors, the electrical and oxygen systems, and the fuel supply. He also had to know how to land the plane if the pilot and co-pilot were killed. That's why he was a technical sergeant. Here you can see the top turret with the twin 50 caliber machine guns, which my father had to sit between and fire, atop a restored B-24 bomber at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. Military aircraft of the day was often decorated with nicknames and colorful imagery fashioned by the crew. The images usually involved women, as you can imagine, when they were designed by 20-year-old men. This is a view inside the cockpit of a B-24 bomber at the Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona. You can see the bottom of the top turret gunner station at the top of the photo. Straight ahead are the backs of the pilot and co-pilot seats and their view out the windshield of the plane. The navigator station is at the lower right-hand corner. Close quarters for all. Flying in a B-24 was dangerous duty. They had to navigate through enemy flak fields and fight through hordes of Nazi fighter planes. On top of this, they also had to deal with mechanical failures and aviation mishaps. In 1943, 3/4 of U.S. airmen were killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. The average life expectancy during my dad's time, he was there in 1944, like I said before, was 7 missions. My father had to complete 50 missions to go home. Just the year before, only 25 missions were needed. The war was intensifying, and they needed the manpower. As soon as he gets to Italy, my dad starts recording his missions in his diary, counting down the time until he can go home. Camp life in southern Italy left a lot to be desired. The men lived in tents which were cold in the winter without heat and hot in the summer. Note the picture of the men with their cots moved outside of their tents. Conditions were Spartan, and of course, tensions were high as their lives were on the line. Here's a picture my dad took of the men of San Giovanni gathering for mail call. At the time, this was their only link to home. There was nothing like getting a letter or care package from their loved ones. Like young people everywhere, they still found time for some fun. My dad's in the front, pulling the cart in the photo on the left. And I love this shot of my dad, who was a short guy, on top of the human totem pole on the right. This is a picture my father took of a sole American bomber coming back to base at San Giovanni after a mission. The worst nights at camp were the tough ones when buddies did not come back. Like the night my dad's friend Roger's crew went down on July 8, 1944, south of Breslau, Italy. Everyone on board had 45 missions to their credit. My dad wrote in his diary, "This was sure a sad place last night." Now for a little background. My father went to Italy via Tunisia in North Africa, where he had his final month of training. His unit had flown to Brazil on New Year's Eve 1943, then on to Senegal, and overland to Tunisia. The Allies controlled Tunisia because they had landed in French North Africa on November 8, 1942. This invasion was called Operation Torch, commanded by General Dwight D. Eisenhower. After initial resistance, the Vichy French, who were allied with the Nazis, agreed to a ceasefire, and on May 13, 1943, the last Axis troops in Africa had surrendered in Tunisia. From North Africa, the British and American forces landed in Sicily in July of 1943. Next came the invasion of the toe of Italy at Salerno on the west coast in September of 1943. When my dad arrived at San Giovanni Air Base near Cerignola in February of 1944, the Allies controlled southern Italy and were pushing north. You can see the line where the division between the north and the south. From southern Italy, the 15th Air Force conducted a key part of the Allied strategic bombing initiative. Their aim was to destroy the Nazi economic engine and its ability to manufacture weapons and fuel for war. This was accomplished by daylight bombing of ball bearing and aircraft factories, oil refineries, and transportation hubs in northern Italy, southern Germany, France, Austria, and the Balkans. This is a painting I did showing the bombing of the Pelosi oil refinery in Romania. You hear a lot about the exploits of the US Air Force, which flew out of England and conducted daylight bombing of Germany, and the British Royal Air Force, which pounded German cities at night. But much less has been written about the 15th Air Force's role in defeating the Nazis. Barrett Tillman, in his book, talks about this. His book is called Forgotten 15, The Daring Airmen Who Crippled Hitler's War Machine. The more I learned about the 15th, the more I realized the importance of my father's first-person account. After the Allied invasion of Sicily in July of 1943, Benito Mussolini was ousted from his position as Prime Minister of Italy. He was then rescued by German forces in a daring coup known as the Grand Sasso Raid. Mussolini was then installed as the leader of the Italian Socialist Republic, a German puppet state in northern Italy. As the war neared its end and Allied forces advanced, Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland and was captured and executed by partisans. This is a painting I did showing the location of the targets of my father's 50 combat missions. The U.S. air base they flew out of was near Cerignola, just above the heel of the boot of Italy. Notice a concentration of targets in northern Italy, Austria, and Romania. The longest flights they made were to eastern Romania. Flights over Austria and Italy were also the most dangerous. They also did bombing runs to France, Germany, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia. Back then, Romania was spelled different than it is now. It's not a typo. This painting helps you to picture what these missions were like. The B-24s were loaded with up to 8,000 pounds of bombs. If they were lucky, escort fighter planes accompanied them to the target and picked them up on the other side. But they were not always lucky. Sometimes they flew through flat fields and groups of enemy fighters without fighter protection. And sometimes they had mechanical problems on these long flights, to say nothing of bad weather and countless hours of flight over dangerous enemy territory to get to the target and back to base. Here are 3 of the American fighter escorts mentioned in my dad's accounts. On the left is the P-38 Lightning with a 20mm cannon and 4 50 caliber machine guns. It had a distinctive appearance that set it apart from other fighter planes in the war, with a central cockpit nestled between 2 fuselages. This plane traveled up to 414 miles an hour, which minimized the risk of it being hit by gunfire during attack missions. In the center is the P-47 Thunderbolt, which was a fearsome force on the battlefield with its formidable firepower. It could be armed with 8 50 caliber machine guns and 5-inch rockets, or carry 2,500 pounds of bombs. On the right is the P-51 Mustang, which was hailed as the epitome of speed, firepower, and maneuverability during the war. The P-51 was the plane flown by the noted Tuskegee Airmen, who also flew over the dangerous Mediterranean theater. Last month, I had the chance to see this restored aircraft, which was typical of the planes flown by the Tuskegee Airmen. I am sure some of you saw it as well at the Aviation Museum of New Hampshire in Londonderry. It was part of a traveling exhibit about the challenges faced by black soldiers who participated with distinction in the air war, as well as the women pilots of the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, WASPs, who ferried aircraft, towed targets, and tested aircraft domestically. As he counted down the missions he needed to get home, my dad typically recorded each mission's altitude, weather, time in the air, whether flak or enemy fighters were encountered, and of course, the casualties. Now, from the diaries in my dad's own words. On April 21st, 1944, he wrote that the target was Bucharest, Romania. Flew over in plane number 9265 today, loaded with 500 pounds. We were supposed to have P-38s, P-51s, and P-47s for escort, but not a one showed up. This is one mission we will never forget, for more reasons than one. We had bad weather all the way, forced to zigzag all the way up. Finally hit the target after passing through 2 fighter belts. About 30 fighters attacked us before we got to the target. Heavy flak over target with 40 MEs, which stands for Messerschmitt, 109s attacking us. We were flying in low, left number 4 position. After bombs away, low left got separated from the rest of the formation. We then left our position and headed for the main formation. Finally caught up with them with 4 109s on our tail. They peppered us with cannon shells for at least 15 minutes, but it seems they were too far out of range. Cannon burst was about 100 yards behind us all the time. Finally, one made a real close pass at us, one of Goring's crack outfit with yellow noses and wingtips. He came in to within 100 yards of us, and I got a few good shots off at him on the breakaway. We lost our favorite ship today. Old Hell's Angels, alias the Shadow, was shot down by a 109. Lieutenant Benson was piloting with a new crew. We all feel pretty low, but thank God we weren't flying it today. The group lost 4 more ships besides our baby. Flew at 25,000 feet. Only 2 ships came back from low left, us and 209, which was shot up pretty bad. 2 men bailed out over the target and 3 injured. The photo on the right shows a pair of the Messerschmitt 109s, Goring's crack fighter planes. On April 25th, 1944, my father wrote, "The target, Turin, Italy. This really was a hell of a mission today. We flew in our new ship 258. We had to break a jinx this morning. This was the 5th plane to go up over the target, but the other 4 never came back. Thank God we made it okay, although we had to climb from 12,000 feet to 21,000 feet on 3 engines. We were up to 18,000 feet when number 1 turbo went out, and due to bad weather, we had to climb down to 12,000. We couldn't turn back because we were too far in enemy territory. Managed to stay in formation, but forced to salvo our bomb load. Saw a B-24 shot down on the way to the target. 4 shoots is all that came, and the plane hit the ground and blew up. Flak over the target was intense and accurate. Crippled quite a few of our planes. We lost 4 in our group. 1 or possibly 2 of these believed to have landed in Corsica. So far, no report has come. We are all sweating out Lieutenant John Dunn, who was flying co-pilot with a new crew. Sure hope they made it okay. The last time we saw them, they were flying over the Aegean Sea with number 4 engine feathered." In a marginal note, he wrote, "They all landed in Corsica and all were safe." In early May, my dad gets a bit of respite with some R&R on the Isle of Capri. Here he is on the left with some very cool cats. He writes in his diary, "Believe me, it's quite a relief to get away from here for a while." On June 6, 1944, my father wrote, "The target is Brasov, Romania. Went out with 500-pound demos today. Had a swell trip on the way up. We had about 100 planes for escort. Bomb target from 10,000 feet in staked down boxes. We were last to go over, so by that time they really had our range. Picked up quite a few flak holes. One piece came through the dome of my top turret and hit me in the back of the head. Thank God I had my steel helmet on. It dented it about 1/4 inch. Over the target, we were attacked by 5 109s. We got a 20mm shell in the waist, came in low at Station 8 and blew up inside the ship. It knocked both waist gunners for a spill. How they missed being hit, God only knows. The back end is just peppered with buckshot. Some holes are over 2 inches in radius. Where the shell came in was a real hole. Today, the invasion was started on the coast of France. That was sure good news to hear when we landed. The picture at the right shows the 2 waist gunners who are stationed midship. On June 9, 1944, my father wrote that the target is Munich, Germany. Went out this morning with 500-pound demos. We had been sweating this mission out for a long time. 500 heavy gun installation known to be there, and believe me, they really threw it up. He's talking about the flak, those flak cannons. As we got to the IP, which is the initial point where the bombardier takes over the plane, and started in on a bomb run, the 455 was over the target, and we couldn't tell the plane from the flak. It was so darn heavy, and we knew we had to go right through it. Dropped our bombs, and everyone started to do evasive action to miss as much of it as possible, and I believe that was a good idea. Planes were not shot up too bad considering the amount of flak over there. Some enemy fighters in the air, but they never attacked our group. P-38s, 51s, and 47s for escort. Flew over target at 24,000 feet. One not to be forgotten. Mussolini was supposed to be there in conference with Hitler and some of his boys. Hope we blew their pants off. Ordnance plant was main objective, but due to overcast, we had to bomb on ETA. Time in the air, 7 hours, 30 minutes. The picture at the right, on the right is from the World War II archives and shows the results of bombing in Munich in 1944. My dad flew his final mission on July 12, 1944, a dangerous flight over Miramas, France. He was so excited that he wrote in his diary the word finished in 3 languages, Italian, French, and English. He would not have to go on another bombing run. He was going home. After his final mission, my dad and his crew were hanging around and waiting for orders to go home. They were given leave and traveled 11 hours by truck to Rome, which had been liberated the month before on June 4th. While he was there, he saw the sights and had an audience with the Pope. He wrote about it to his Aunt Eldia in Somersworth. I was on a beautiful pass a few days ago. I went to Rome with the rest of the crew. We had a wonderful time up there. The closer we got to Rome, the more it looked like a big city in the States. The people up there are dressed up compared to the ones around this area. There's plenty of good-looking girls. My ambition while up there was to go to the Vatican and see the Pope, and that I did. My dad won the World War II Air Medal 5 times, each additional award earned an oak leaf cluster. In addition to the Air Medal, my dad earned the American Defense Medal on the left, which was for his National Guard service, and the World War II Victory Medal on the right. My dad proudly wore the Silver Wings, which were the Air Force badge for enlisted aircrew members. When I first found the jumble of medals in his Air Medal box, we had little idea of how important each and every one of them was. I learned so much from tracking down the meaning of each one of these and discussing them with former members of the military. My father left Italy in August of 1944. He served another year in the Army through October 1945 because soldiers had to commit to serving through the end of the war plus 6 months. Little is known about where he went or what he did in the interim. When I requested his military records, I was told they were lost in the Missouri fire. But for my dad, it was home to Somersworth. This is a painting of the view from the back of our house on 3rd Street in 1972. I painted that when I was in high school. He went back to the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard after the war. He married a pretty girl from Rochester, Marguerite Dubois, and started a family. His aircraft training served him well. He transferred to Peace Air Base when it opened in 1956. He served in Korea during the conflict there with the U.S. Air Force, and he retired from Peace in 1970 as foreman of the jet engine shop while I was in high school. My father was haunted by memories of the war, but he had good ones too, remembering friendships forged and exciting flights with hundreds of planes filling the sky. Those times changed his life. In later years, he got to visit his old pilot, John Vignetti, seen in the photo on the left, We can only imagine their shared memories of that last mission over Miramas, France, the 50th mission for both of them. John Vignetti later became a colonel and served in Vietnam. Interesting thing that happened while I was finishing the book. I got a call from the Somerset Historical Museum telling me that my father's jacket had been donated to the museum by the local VFW. Quite a coincidence after all these years. Seems my father had donated it to them for someone to wear while doing honor guard detail at funerals and such. My own tribute to my dad was a series of paintings to help tell his story. As you can see, the paintings are around the room tonight. Thanks to everyone for coming, and to the Wright Museum of World War II for hosting. This place is a wonderful resource for our community, and these stories really need to be told. I believe my father and his crew survived at least in part because he was such a gifted mechanic. I treasure the memory of the many times my father helped me patch together various jalopies while I was in high school. He could fix anything. And now I can truly appreciate why one of his favorite expressions was, 20,000 feet in the air, flat on my back without a parachute, and the pilot says, bail out. My dad didn't win the war single-handedly, but he met the challenges of his time with real heart and unfaltering courage. Those are the words from his certificate of 50 missions, and I thought them a fitting title. Most of all, I hope Dad's story inspires us all to cherish our country, look out for our buddies, kick up our heels when we get the chance, and never ever lose sight of the sweet joy of going home.